The Straits Echo from October 2nd, 1923 contained a summary of the investigation into the collision between the Ranee and the Boribat. Quote, the plaintiffs alleged that no proper lookout was kept on board the Boribat. There was no certified or properly qualified officer in charge at the time, and that the Boribat improperly starboarded her helm and attempted to cross ahead of the Ranee. The statement of defense alleged that at the time the Boribat sighted the Ranee, it was the duty of the latter vessel to keep her course. But the Ranee crossed the course of the Boribat.
Hello, and welcome to the Shipwreck Archive.
Thank you. Would you happen to have the story? A careless blow to the Ranee.
Here we are. Enjoy!
The Ranee was a 319-ton twin-screw, steel-hulled steamship built in Lübeck in 1906. Originally, she had sailed under German ownership, but when World War I occurred, she was sold to the Straits Steamship Company. Under the ownership of the Straits Steamship Company of Singapore, she was engaged in coastal work in the region, carrying passengers and general cargo. She traveled with a crew of 63 under the command of Captain Rogers. At little past 7 p.m. on the 14th of March, 1923, the Ranee departed from Mersing, bound for Singapore. In addition to her crew, she had on board 87 passengers, though this would later take some time to determine. She was also carrying 70 tons of cargo, including tin ore, rubber, and rotten. For those on board the Ranee, this was a routine voyage on her usual route, one they had made many times before, and Captain Rogers felt comfortable leaving the deck to his chief officer a little past 8 p.m., so he could retire to his cabin. He gave his usual order that once the Cebu Channel was cleared, the chief officer should alter the course to the southeast, and that he should be called back to the deck at midnight, or sooner if anything unusual happened. Chief Officer Sharpham was now in command on the bridge, accompanied by a quartermaster and a lookout standing nearby. Chief Officer Sharpham had been with Ranee for a year and a half, and during that time the steering instructions for the channel had remained the same, so there was still nothing unusual about the voyage. It was a dark night, but a calm and clear one. The passengers had all retired for the night, as had any of the crew members who were not on duty. Everything was quiet and calm as they proceeded on their regular course. A little after 11 at night, Chief Officer Sharpham saw a white light in the distance, about 4 degrees to port, coming in their direction. A little while after he saw it, the lookout also alerted him to it. At the time, they both believed the light was 7 or 8 miles away. About 8 minutes later, they could see a green light. Chief Officer Sharpham was immediately on guard. The other vessel showed no sign of changing her course, even though they were showing all of their lights, so she should have been aware of them. There was no port nearby that the other ship could be heading towards to explain the course she was taking. Chief Officer Sharpham considered 2 possibilities. Either the red light was obscured in some way, which did happen, especially on local craft, or she was very bad at steering. He was not sure which ship was coming towards them, but the Straits were no stranger to collisions. It was true, there had been no dramatic ones recently, but that was no reason to let his guard down. Aware that local craft did not always follow the rules of the road as they should, Chief Officer Sharpham preferred to give them a wide berth, and he altered the course to starboard by 10 degrees, hoping that the dramatic change would signal to the other vessel that he meant to carry out the regulations for avoiding collisions at sea. The Crown prosecutor would later accuse Chief Officer Sharpham of running away due to the dramatic change in course. But Chief Officer Sharpham would calmly respond that he considered that he had taken prompt and reasonable action. Soon after this course was altered, both the lookout and Chief Officer Sharpham could suddenly see the other vessel's green light, with a suddenness that made Chief Officer Sharpham suspect that something obscuring it had been removed, rather than it being visible due to any change of course. Shortly afterwards, though, they were only able to see the white light and the red light, and Chief Officer Sharpham once again became uncomfortable with how close they were likely to pass. He did not want to change directions suddenly and spook the other vessel, so he altered his course again before they met and relaxed, feeling that there was no chance now of collision. The courts would later criticize him for not waking Captain Rogers, considering the questionable navigation of the other vessel. But Chief Officer Sharpham, up until this point, seems to have considered everything that had occurred to be routine, nothing to wake the captain for. Sometimes local vessels did not show their lights. Sometimes they did not perfectly follow the rules of the road, but they could be avoided, and all was well. Chief Officer Sharpham's belief that the two ships would pass without incident was shattered when the two vessels were about 600 yards apart. The approaching vessel suddenly swung around, showing her green light, and creating in Chief Officer Sharpham's mind the very firm belief that the other vessel was completely oblivious to the rules of the road, or her steering gear had broken. As soon as he saw the green light, he swung the helm hard aport and blew a short warning blast on the ship's whistle, causing Captain Rogers to rush to the bridge to see what was happening. The Ranee responded quickly to her helm, but it was not enough to stop the collision. About 2 minutes after the warning whistle had been sounded, approximately 11:40 at night, the other vessel struck the Ranee on the port side near the main hatch. Captain Rogers began to make a run towards shore to try to beach the vessel before she sank, while Chief Officer Sharpham ordered the boats swung out, and then after discovering the hold was quickly filling with water, ran along the between deck telling the passengers to quickly head to the deck with their lifebelts and no luggage. By the time he reached the deck again, almost all the passengers had safely reached the deck. The crew had had a lifeboat drill just the week before, and they were getting the boats out smoothly, but one of the boats on the port side got hung up. Chief Officer Sharpham was able to help clear the boat, but as he was doing so, the ship made a sudden list to starboard and began to rapidly settle bow first. The list rendered the port lifeboats that they had been working so hard to launch useless. The crew only managed to launch 2 starboard boats, one of which capsized. Fortunately, those on the capsized boat were able to cling to the boat and remain afloat until they were rescued. Chief Officer Sharpham ordered those who remained on the ship to head aft, since that was the part of the vessel likely to remain above water the longest, and then headed to the bridge. Chief Officer Sharpham was telling Captain Rogers that he did not think the Ranee was going to live long, that her bow was already under water, when the lights suddenly went out. Both men, taking this a sign that there was no chance of saving the ship any longer, put on their own lifebelts and jumped into the water. They fashioned a raft from wreckage in the water, which helped keep themselves and some of the passengers afloat until a rescue could find them. It was a boat from the ship, the Boribat, that found them and took them from the raft. The Boribat sailed under the ownership of the Siam Steam Navigation Company of Bangkok. She traveled similar routes to the Ranee, and they had passed her only the day before, meaning that they had no expectation of meeting her again so soon. The Boribat had departed from Singapore that day at 3 p.m., and they too were on a routine voyage. But Captain Mathiasen was exhausted due to the quick turnaround of his vessel, He had been up since 7 in the morning, overseeing the unloading and loading of his vessel in Singapore, and then their departure, with no chance for a nap. Now he was on watch from 6 p.m. to midnight. At 11 he lay down on the stretcher that was set up on the bridge and told the sarang, who was also on the bridge but did not carry a certificate, to wake him up if he saw anything, and to ensure that the ship remained on course. The sarang woke Captain Mathiasen right before the Ranee blew the warning whistle. Captain Mathiasen would later accuse the last maneuver to starboard by the Ranee of being the reason that the two ships collided, but it was hard for him to prove this when he had been asleep up until that point and unaware of anything that had happened. Captain Mathiasen, judging in that moment that changing direction would do nothing, instead gave the order for the engines to full aback. It was too late. As soon as the collision occurred, Captain Mathiasen had ordered his engines stopped instead of backing. He had played his spotlight along the side of the Ranee, searching for damage, but with her list he had not been able to see any. He then told his engine room to proceed slowly, trying to get alongside the Ranee, but before they could, the Ranee had gone down. It was estimated by everyone involved that the Ranee had remained above water for less than 10 minutes following the collision, hardly enough time for the passengers who had been asleep to come to terms with what had happened. Captain Mathiasen immediately ordered his ship's boats out to find survivors, and it would not take long for the boats that had been launched by the Ranee to come alongside. The crew of the Boribat searched in boats for survivors, many of whom were clinging to planks and wreckage in the water, until 4 in the morning. The Boribat remained anchored at the scene until morning, and then resumed the search, but they did not find any more survivors, only the remains of 13 people who were buried. It was discovered that in total between the crew and passengers, 31 people had been lost. The passengers who asked if anything more could have been done on the Ranee stated that the confusion had been intense, as people had been thrown from their bunks in the darkness by the collision, and they believed that the main way more people could have been saved was if there had just been a little more time. At the inquiry, Captain Mathiasen put up what defense he could, but it was not easy for him to defend himself, having been asleep on duty. He could state that he had trust in the sarang, but the sarang was not certified to have command of the bridge. It was also found that there were not enough certified members of the engine crew for a ship that was traveling between Singapore and Bangkok, a regulation that Captain Mathiasen pleaded ignorance of. The Boribat was found completely at fault for the collision and the loss of life. Chief Officer Sharpham could only express his disgust to the court that another ship could be run in such a lax fashion. When questioned in court, he stated that he went to the bridge of the Boribat after they had been rescued the next morning at 9 o'clock, only to find that there was no certified officer on the bridge then either, despite the fact that the ship was damaged and should have been handled with the utmost care. He instead watched as the man at the wheel left the wheel entirely on occasion to spit over the side of the ship. As he said to one of the passengers from the Ranee, who had also been rescued, quote, "How can one expect to run safely against this?" For more information, please see the Straits Times from the 28th of March, 1923, or see our other sources in the description below. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for visiting the Shipwreck Archives. See you soon.